I want a divorce. I've already moved my things. Those 9 words came out of his mouth with a grin, the kind someone wears when they think they've already won. We were sitting in the place where we'd toasted to forever 15 times before. The server had just poured champagne into crystal glasses that caught the candlelight. I watched tiny bubbles rise to the surface while my husband of 15 years told me our marriage was over. I took a breath, lifted my glass, drank. His grin flickered. That's all? You're not going to say anything? What should I say? He settled back into his chair, and I could see relief washing over his face. This was simpler than whatever scenario he'd rehearsed. I thought you'd cry or yell or something. I'm processing. His phone started vibrating against the cloth. He looked down, his forehead creasing, and pressed the button to silence it. 5 seconds later, it started again. I reached into my purse and placed my credit card on the white cloth between us. You might want to get that. He stared at the card like it was speaking a language he didn't understand. Then he looked at me. His phone kept buzzing, demanding his attention. But before I tell you what happened when he finally answered, let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where your whole life changed in one sentence? Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from, because what comes next is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about revenge. My name is Cadence, 39 years old. Financial planner with a client list that includes people whose names you'd recognize if I said them out loud. I grew up in a house where money was tight, and secrets were tighter. My father left when I was 8, and my mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. She taught me one thing that stuck. Never depend on anyone to save you. Save yourself first. I met my husband in college. He was studying business. I was studying finance. We were both hungry for success, but in different ways. He wanted recognition. I wanted security. When we got married at 24, I thought we wanted the same future. Maybe we did back then. Maybe people just change. He started his consulting business the year after our wedding. I helped him write the initial business plan at our kitchen area while eating takeout at midnight. He'd talk about his vision for hours, and I'd listen, making notes, asking questions that would strengthen his pitch. When he landed his first major client, he came home with flowers and told me I was his good luck charm. I didn't want to be anyone's charm. I wanted to be his partner. But I smiled and put the flowers in water and told myself things would balance out. They didn't. As his business grew, my career grew too. I built my practice carefully, client by client, referral by referral. I specialized in helping people protect their assets during transitions, divorce, death, business dissolution. I learned how to read contracts like some people read novels. I learned where money hides and how to make it reappear. My husband never asked about my work. When people at gatherings would ask what I did, he'd jump in before I could answer. She helps people with their retirement accounts, he'd say, like I was processing paperwork at a bank. Then he'd steer the conversation back to his business, his deals, his wins. I stopped correcting him after the 3rd year. What was the point? By our 10th anniversary, his company employed 23 people. He was traveling twice a month, speaking at industry events, getting quoted in publications. I was proud of him, genuinely. But I also noticed how he'd started introducing me at events. This is my wife, he'd say. Not this is Cadence. Not this is Cadence. She's a financial planner. Just my wife. Like I was an accessory he'd purchased to complete his outfit. The same year, something happened that changed the trajectory of everything. His business partner, a man named Gil who'd joined the company in year 3, showed up at my office without an appointment. My assistant told me he was in the waiting area, and I almost sent him away because my schedule was packed. But something in her voice made me agree to see him. Gil sat in the chair facing my workspace and didn't waste time on small talk. We need $2 million. The business is at a crossroads. We can expand now and dominate our market, or we stay small and watch competitors swallow our opportunities. Your husband won't ask you for this. His pride won't let him. But I'm asking. I kept my face neutral, the way I'd trained myself to do when clients dropped bombs during consultations. Why wouldn't he ask me himself? Because to him, asking his wife for money would mean admitting he hasn't made it on his own. He needs to be the one who provides. You know how he thinks. I did know. I knew it in my bones. Show me the projections. Gil pulled out a folder. I spent the next hour reviewing spreadsheets, cash flow analyses, market research. The numbers were solid. The opportunity was real. With $2 million in capital, they could open 3 new locations, hire specialized staff, lock in contracts with clients who were currently just interested prospects. Why come to me? I asked. There are investors who'd jump at this. Because traditional investors would want equity and control. We'd lose decision-making power. But your family, we could structure this as a loan. Fair interest rate, standard terms. You'd make money, we'd keep control, everyone wins. Except my husband's pride. He doesn't have to know it's you. I set the folder down. You want me to secretly fund my husband's business. I want you to make a smart investment. What he knows or doesn't know is your choice. I sent Gil away without an answer. That night, I lay awake while my husband slept beside me, snoring softly. I thought about my mother working herself into WISA. Exhaustion because she had no safety net when my father left. I thought about the years I'd spent building my own career while my husband treated it like a hobby. I thought about what would happen if his business failed, and if our marriage failed, and if I had nothing to show for 15 years except joint debt and shattered dreams. The next morning, I called Gil. I'll do it, but we structure this my way. I create an investment entity. The money gets loaned to the business through that entity. Standard commercial terms, market rate interest, and clauses that protect me if certain conditions are met. What conditions? Divorce, business dissolution, criminal activity, anything that puts my investment at risk. He's your husband. That's exactly why I need protection. We spent 3 weeks with lawyers structuring the deal. The investment entity's ownership was obscured through legal layers that would take a forensic accountant weeks to untangle. On paper, the loan came from a private equity source that Gil had supposedly courted for months. My husband never questioned it. He was too busy celebrating the influx of capital and planning the expansion. The business exploded over the next 5 years. They opened 4 locations instead of 3. Staff grew to 67 people. Revenue tripled, then tripled again. My $2 million loan ballooned in value. The interest compounded. The business appreciated. By year 7, my investment was worth $8 million. My husband thought he'd built an empire through pure talent. He had no idea his wife owned the foundation it stood on. I didn't tell him because part of me wanted to see if he'd ever ask about my financial situation. If he'd ever wonder how I could afford the things I bought or the investments I made. He never did. In his mind, I made decent money helping people plan for retirement, and whatever I earned was cute but inconsequential compared to his success. Around year 12 of our marriage, things started shifting. Small things at first. He'd check his phone during dinner and smile at messages he wouldn't explain. He started buying new clothes without mentioning it. He joined a gym and went at hours that didn't make sense for someone with his schedule. I noticed cologne I hadn't bought him. I found receipts for restaurants we hadn't been to together. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't plan. I watched. I documented. I waited. 3 months before our 15th anniversary, I found the apartment lease in his bag. He'd left it there, tucked between a protein bar and a business magazine. The address was in a building downtown. Monthly rent was $4,000. The lease had started 2 months earlier. I didn't confront him that night. I went to my office the next morning and pulled up property records. The building where he'd rented his secret apartment belonged to a holding company. I traced the ownership through 3 shell entities until I found my own name staring back at me. I owned that building. I'd bought it 2 years earlier as part of a real estate portfolio generating rental income. My husband was cheating on me in a property I owned. I actually laughed when I realized it. Sat alone in my office and laughed until tears ran down my face. The universe has a sense of humor sometimes. That afternoon, I called Gil. How long have you known? Silence on the other end. Then, known what? Don't insult me. How long have you known about the affair? A long exhale. 6 months. Maybe closer to 7. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought about it every day. But the business is at a critical point. And if I told you and things blew up, everything we built would. You chose the business over honesty. I understand the logic. I'm sorry. Don't be. You made a practical choice. Now I'm going to make one. I spent the next 11 weeks preparing. I consulted with 3 different attorneys, none of whom knew about the others. I reviewed every document related to my investment in my husband's business. I met with the bank that held the company's primary credit line. I didn't make threats or demands. I just asked questions. Made sure everyone understood the terms of agreements that had been signed 7 years earlier. The most important clause was one Gil and I had argued about during the initial negotiations. I'd insisted on including a provision that allowed me to call the entire loan immediately if my marriage to the primary borrower dissolved. Gil thought it was paranoid. "You really think he'd leave you?" he'd asked. "I think hope is not a strategy," I'd answered. Now that clause was about to become the most expensive sentence my husband never read. He picked our anniversary for his announcement. Maybe he thought the setting would keep me calm. Maybe he thought 15 years of history would make me handle it gracefully. Or maybe he just liked the symbolism of ending our marriage. In the same place we'd celebrated it every year, we sat at a booth near the window. Same restaurant, same month, same champagne they always served us. The server remembered us, asked how we were doing, told us it was wonderful to see us again. My husband smiled at her like nothing was about to detonate. After she left, he folded his hands on the white cloth and looked at me with an expression I'd seen him use in business negotiations. "I've been thinking about us," he said, "about where we are and where we're going. I don't think we're moving in the same direction anymore. What direction are you moving in? I need something different. Someone who understands the pressure I'm under. Someone who's excited about my success instead of just tolerating it." "You think I've been tolerating you? Haven't you?" I considered that. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been tolerating him for years while building my own separate life. "What do you want?" That's when he said it. "I want a divorce. I've already moved my things." I picked up my champagne glass and drank slowly, letting the bubbles dissolve on my tongue. His face was doing something strange, shifting between relief and confusion. He'd expected tears or anger or begging. He got silence. "You're not going to fight for us?" he asked. "Is there an us to fight for? I mean, I thought you'd at least want to discuss it, ask questions. Something. What questions should I ask? Whether there's someone else? There is. Whether you've been planning this? You have. Whether you're taking the apartment downtown? You already did." I set my glass down gently. "I'm not going to perform shock for you. You made a choice. I'm accepting it." His phone vibrated again, rattling against the cloth. He glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened. "This is the bank. They've called 4 times tonight. What's going on? Answer it. Find out." He stared at me for 3 long seconds before swiping to accept the call. "This is really not a good time," he said into the phone, his voice sharp. Then his expression changed. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out. "What do you mean? Called immediately. Who authorized that? I didn't sign anything about—" He went quiet, listening. His free hand gripped the edge of our booth. "That's impossible. The loan was secured through Gil's investor contacts. My wife has nothing to do with—" Another pause. Longer this time. His eyes found mine across the bubbles and candlelight. "I'll call you back." He lowered the phone slowly, like it had become heavy. "What did you do?" "I made a business decision." "What kind of business decision?" "The kind investors make when the terms of their agreement are triggered." "Investors? What are you talking about?" I leaned forward slightly. 7 years ago, Gil came to my office. He told me your business needed $2 million to expand. He said you wouldn't ask me because of your pride, so I gave it. To him. Not as your wife, as an investor. He looked like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "You're lying." "I'm not." The loan was structured through an investment entity I created. Standard commercial terms. Market rate interest. Compounding annually. Gil knew. "You didn't." "Why wouldn't he tell me?" "Because I asked him not to. And because the money was green, regardless of where it came from." His hand was still gripping the booth, knuckles white. "How much?" $2 million initially. With interest and compounding over 7 years? $8.3 million. That's insane. We don't owe anyone $8 million. You owe me $8.3 million. The loan agreement has a clause. If my marriage to the primary borrower ends, I have the right to call the loan immediately. You just told me you want a divorce. So I'm calling it. The bank was notifying you that payment is due in 72 hours. The server appeared with menus, smiling. "Are we ready to order? Or should I give you a few more minutes?" "We need a minute?" I told her. She nodded and disappeared. My husband leaned across our booth, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You can't do this. The business can't come up with 8 million in 3 days. This will destroy everything we built. Everything you built. You made it very clear over the years that my contributions were minimal. That's not fair. I never said. You didn't have to say it. You showed me every single day for 15 years. And now I'm showing you what happens when you underestimate someone. People will lose their jobs. Gil will lose everything. This isn't just about us. Gil knew about your affair for 7 months and said nothing. He chose protecting you over being honest with me. Now he gets to live with that choice. My husband sat back, his breathing shallow. Who are you? I don't even recognize you right now. I'm the woman who saved your business while you were too proud to ask. I'm the investor you never knew you had. I'm your wife, who you're currently leaving for someone else. I finished my champagne. But mostly, I'm someone who plans ahead. His phone started vibrating again. He ignored it. There has to be another way. We can negotiate. Extended payment terms. Something. The terms are in the contract. 72 hours. I'll fight this. I'll get lawyers. This is extortion. It's not extortion. It's a legal loan agreement being executed according to its terms. You're welcome to hire every attorney in the state. They'll all tell you the same thing. You signed a contract, and now it's due. I didn't sign anything. Gil did. Gil had power of attorney for business financing decisions. It's in your corporate bylaws. You signed those. He stared at me like I'd just pulled off a mask to reveal someone completely different underneath. Maybe I had. Maybe I'd been wearing that mask so long I'd forgotten what was beneath it. The server returned. I'm so sorry, but we need to clear this area soon. Can I get you anything else? Just the check, I said. She brought it in a small leather folder. I put my credit card inside without looking at the total and handed it back. My husband watched this happen like he was observing surgery through protective glass. After the server processed payment and returned with the receipt, we sat in silence. Other diners laughed at nearby tables. Someone proposed 2 booths away, and the whole restaurant applauded. Life continuing like nothing had shifted. Why? He finally asked. Why invest in the business secretly? Why not just tell me? Because I wanted to see if you'd ever ask. If you'd ever wonder about my financial situation, or my capabilities. You never did. You assumed I was small and simple, and unimportant. That assumption just cost you everything. I never thought you were unimportant. You thought I was a retirement account manager. You told people that for years. I manage portfolios worth hundreds of millions. I broker deals that fund entire developments. But you never asked, so you never knew. He rubbed his face with both hands. What do you want? Money? The house? Tell me what it'll take to make this go away. I don't want it to go away. I want you to feel what I felt every time you dismissed me at a party. Every time you interrupted me to talk about your business. Every time you made me feel like I was decoration instead of a partner. So this is revenge. This is consequences. We left separately. He went to his car, still holding his phone like it might explode. I went to mine and drove home. The same home we'd shared for 12 years. The same home he'd apparently been moving his things out of while I was at work. When I got there, I walked through the rooms cataloging what was missing. His clothes from the bedroom, his laptop from the kitchen where he always worked in the mornings, his shoes from the entryway, the picture of his parents from the living area. He'd taken pieces of our life and relocated them to an apartment in my building, thinking I'd never know, never discover, never do anything about it. I poured a glass of wine and sat in the living area. My phone started lighting up around midnight. Text after text after text. I didn't read them. I already knew what they said. Variations of desperation and anger and disbelief. I turned the phone face down and went to bed. The next morning, I woke to 47 messages. I scrolled through them while drinking coffee. We need to talk. This is insane. Please call me. You're destroying innocent people's lives. I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? We can work this out. I love you. That last one almost made me laugh. He loved me now that I held the knife. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I got dressed and went to my office like it was any other Friday. My assistant asked if I was okay because apparently I looked tired. Didn't sleep well, I told her. Anniversary dinner went late. She smiled. 15 years. That's amazing. You must have celebrated properly. We definitely marked the occasion. I spent the day in consultations with clients, helping them protect assets and plan for futures and build safety nets. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my entire career helping people prepare for worst-case scenarios while living through my own. Gil called around 3 in the afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 4, again at 5. At 6, he showed up at my office. My assistant had already left for the day, so I let him in myself. He looked terrible, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled. He'd probably been up all night trying to figure out how to solve an unsolvable problem. "We need to talk about this," he said, not bothering with greetings. "There's nothing to talk about. The loan is due in 67 hours. You're going to destroy the business over a marriage problem. Do you understand that? I understand that you knew about my husband's affair for 7 months and didn't tell me. I understand that you chose protecting him over being honest with me. I understand that you thought I'd never find out or never care. I was protecting the business. You were protecting him. Don't confuse the two." Gil sat down in the chair facing my workspace without being invited. "What if we buy out your position? Find another investor to take over the loan? In 67 hours? On terms that include immediate repayment of $8.3 million? Good luck finding that investor. There has to be something we can offer you. Extended terms. Higher interest. Equity in the company. I don't want equity in a company run by men who lie to me. One man lied to you, not me. I just didn't tell you something I should have. That's called lying by omission." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. 67 people work for that company. They have families, mortgages, kids in college. You're going to put them all on the street because you're angry at your husband. I'm not angry. Anger is hot and temporary. This is something much colder. What do you want? Seriously, tell me what you want, and maybe we can make it happen." I considered him for a long moment. Gil wasn't a bad person. He just made a bad choice. But bad choices have consequences, and I wasn't in the business of teaching people lessons they should have learned years ago. "I want my investment back. $8.3 million in 67 hours. That's what I want." "You know we can't do that." "Then, I guess we're done here." He stood slowly, like his bones hurt. "I hope you can live with this." I sleep very well, actually. After he left, I locked up and went home. The house felt different without my husband's things scattered through it. Cleaner somehow, quieter. I made dinner for one and ate while reading a book I'd been trying to finish for 3 months. No interruptions. No phone calls about crises at work. No requests for my opinion on decisions that had already been made. Just silence and my book and food that tasted better than I remembered. My phone buzzed intermittently throughout the evening. More messages from my husband. A few from Gil. One from the business attorney asking for a meeting. I ignored all of them. There was nothing left to discuss. The contract was clear. The deadline was set. What happened next was entirely up to them. Saturday morning arrived bright and painful. My phone showed 32 new messages. I deleted them without reading and went for a run. The neighborhood was quiet at 7 in the morning. People were sleeping in after their Friday nights, unaware that someone's entire world was collapsing 3 blocks away. When I got back, there was a car in my driveway. My husband's business attorney, a woman named Felicity, who I'd met at company events over the years. She was sitting on my front steps, 2 cups of coffee beside her. "Thought you might need this," she said, holding one out. I took it because refusing would have been petty, and I wasn't interested in petty. "You're here to negotiate. I'm here to understand. The contract Gil signed is airtight. I reviewed it last night, 3 times, but I need to understand why you're doing this. My husband wants a divorce. The loan agreement allows me to call it due if that happens. It's straightforward. Nothing about this is straightforward. You're weaponizing a business loan against a personal relationship. I'm protecting my investment during a major life change. That's what the clause was designed for." Felicity sipped her coffee, studying me. "You knew. When you had this clause written, you knew someday you might need it. I hoped I wouldn't, but hope doesn't hold up in court. The business can't pay. You know that. Even if they liquidate everything, they'd maybe come up with $5 million. You'll force them into bankruptcy, and you'll lose half your investment anyway. I've already calculated that outcome. And you're okay with it?" "I'm okay with a lot of things I wasn't okay with last week." She set her coffee down. "What if we could restructure? convert your loan to equity, make you a partial owner. You'd have control, voting rights, and you'd make more money long-term than forcing bankruptcy. I don't want to be partners with men who betray me. Gil didn't betray you. He made a judgment call. He knew my husband was cheating and said nothing for 7 months. That's not a judgment call. That's a choice. And choices have prices. Felicity stood, brushing dirt from her pants. You're going to hurt a lot of innocent people. My husband hurt me. Gil enabled him. The innocent people should be angry at them, not me. That's not how they'll see it. I don't need them to see it my way. I need them to see that contracts matter, and loyalty matters, and actions have consequences. She left without finishing her coffee. I watched her drive away, and then went inside to shower. The hot water felt good against my running tired muscles. I stood under the spray for 20 minutes, letting steam fill the bathroom until I couldn't see my reflection in the mirror anymore. My husband showed up around noon. I saw him through the front window, standing on the porch, hand raised to knock. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. I opened the entrance before he could make contact with the wood. We need to talk, he said. We talked at dinner. That wasn't talking. That was you dropping a bomb. You dropped the bomb. I just responded appropriately. He pushed past me into the house. Our house. Legally still our house for now. You can't actually go through with this. It's insane. Which part is insane? The part where I invested in your business? The part where I protected that investment with standard contract terms? Or the part where you triggered those terms by asking for a divorce? The part where you destroy everything over hurt feelings? I closed the entrance slowly. Hurt feelings. That's what you think this is. What else would it be? It's math. It's risk management. It's consequences for decisions. But you wouldn't understand that because you've never had to think about consequences. You just do what you want and assume it'll work out. He moved through the living area like a trapped animal, picking up objects and setting them down without seeing them. I'll call off the divorce. We'll stay married. Just don't destroy the business. You don't want to stay married. You want to save the business. Maybe both can be true. They can't. You moved out. You rented an apartment. You've been building a separate life for months. You don't get to walk that back because it became expensive. He stopped moving and looked at me directly for the first time. What do you want? Money? The house? Name it. I want you to understand what you took from me. Every time you interrupted me at a dinner party. Every time you introduced me as just your wife. Every time you made my career sound like a hobby. You took my dignity piece by piece for 15 years. And now I'm taking something from you. This isn't equivalent. This is nuclear. Maybe that's what it takes for you to actually see me. He sat down heavily on the sofa we'd picked out together 7 years ago. Who are you? I'm the woman you married. You just never bothered to look closely enough to see who that was. The woman I married wouldn't destroy 67 people's jobs. The woman you married wouldn't have to. But you didn't marry her. You married a version of her you created in your head. Someone small and manageable and grateful. I was never that person. So what now? I'm supposed to just accept that everything I built is gone? You didn't build it alone. You built it with my money. Money you didn't know came from me. But that doesn't make it less mine. He leaned forward, head in his hands. There's someone else. Her name is Brooke. She works in marketing for one of our clients. It started 6 months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen. I know about Brooke. I've known for 3 months. His head snapped up. How? I'm a financial planner. I notice patterns. You started spending differently, behaving differently. So I looked. I found the apartment lease. I found the credit card statements. I found the florist charges and the restaurant receipts. You weren't as careful as you thought. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was planning, making sure when this moment came, I'd be ready. That's psychotic. That's strategic. There's a difference. He stood up, his face changing from desperate to angry. You're enjoying this. Watching me suffer. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm executing a plan. What kind of person plans to destroy someone they supposedly love? I did love you for a very long time, but love doesn't survive being made small for 15 years. It dies quietly, and by the time you notice it's gone, it's too late to revive it. He moved toward the entrance. I'll find a way to pay. I'll take out personal loans. Sell everything I own. Whatever it takes. You have 54 hours. He left without another word. I watched through the window as he got in his vehicle and sat there for 10 minutes before driving away. Maybe he was crying. Maybe he was calling Brooke. Maybe he was just sitting in shock. I didn't particularly care which. The rest of Saturday passed in strange normalcy. I went grocery shopping. I cleaned the kitchen. I read. I existed in a space between my old life and whatever came next. My phone continued buzzing periodically, but I'd turned off notifications. The messages piled up unread. Sunday morning, Gil showed up again. This time with his wife, a woman named Helena who I'd always liked. She taught high school, history, and had a laugh that filled rooms. She wasn't laughing now. "Please," Helena said when I opened the entrance. "Just talk to us. 5 minutes." I let them in. We sat in the living area like civilized people having a civilized conversation about the uncivilized destruction of a business. "We have children," Helena said. 2 kids, in college. Gil's entire retirement is tied up in the business. If it goes under, we lose everything. Gil knew the terms of the loan when he accepted it. He didn't think you'd ever actually use that clause. He thought you and your husband were solid. He was wrong. Gil spoke up, his voice rough. "I'll tell you everything. Every detail about the affair. When it started. Where they meet. Everything I know. Just please restructure the loan. I don't need your information. I have my own." Helena leaned forward. "What kind of person does this? You're going to ruin families over a marriage that was already broken. Your husband helped break it by lying to me for 7 months. He chose loyalty to my husband over honesty with me. Now he's learning what that choice costs. So, we're collateral damage in your revenge scheme. Your consequences in a chain of decisions that started when your husband took my money and decided I didn't deserve the truth." They left, looking older than when they'd arrived. I felt nothing watching them go. Not satisfaction. Not guilt. Just the hollow certainty that I'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Sunday afternoon, the business attorney called. I actually answered this time. "They're trying to find emergency investors," Felicity said. "But no one wants to touch a company with this kind of immediate debt. You've effectively made the business untouchable. That wasn't my intention. My intention was to protect my investment. Your intention was revenge. Let's at least be honest about that." "Fine. It's revenge. Does that change the legal standing?" "No. The contract is solid. I'm calling because I want you to understand what happens next. Tomorrow morning, if they can't pay, they'll have to file for bankruptcy protection. The business will be dissolved. Assets will be sold to pay creditors, which means you'll be first in line. You'll probably recover 4, maybe 5 million of your 8.3. The rest is gone. Gil loses everything. Your husband loses everything. And 67 people lose their jobs right before the holidays. Those people should talk to their employers about why this happened. You're really going through with this. 2. Unless someone deposits $8.3 million in my account by tomorrow morning, yes." She hung up without saying anything further. I sat in the kitchen holding my phone, watching the sun set through the window. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. This was my life now. Silent and controlled. And mine. Monday morning arrived with an alarm at 6. I got up, made coffee, checked my bank accounts. No miraculous deposits. No last-minute saves. The deadline was 11 o'clock. I had 5 hours. My phone rang at 7. My husband. I let it ring. It rang again at 7:30. Gil. I ignored it. At 8, the business attorney called. I answered because I knew what she was going to say. "They're filing at 10, Felicity said. "Bankruptcy protection. It's over. What about the loan? You're the primary secured creditor. Your claim gets processed first. The business assets will be liquidated. Real estate, equipment, client contracts, everything. You'll probably recover 4.2 million after legal fees and processing. The rest is a loss. And everyone else? Employees get unemployment. Gil and your husband walk away with nothing. The clients scatter to competitors. The company that took 15 years to build disappears in 90 days. That's unfortunate. That's all you have to say? What else is there?" She hung up. I finished my coffee and got dressed for work. Professional clothes, subtle makeup, the armor of normalcy. I had client meetings scheduled. Life continuing regardless of what was ending elsewhere. At 9:45, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but something made me look. It was a photo. My husband and Brooke, they were apartment hunting. The photo showed them standing in an empty living area, her head on his shoulder, both smiling at something off camera. The message below the photo said, "Thought you should know what you're losing." I stared at that photo for a long time, at their faces, their body language, the easy comfort between them, and I realized something that changed everything I thought I understood about this situation. They weren't just having an affair, they'd been planning this together. The timing of the divorce announcement, the apartment he'd rented, the way he'd smiled when he told me he was leaving. This wasn't about him falling out of love with me. This was about him positioning himself for something bigger. I pulled up property records on my computer, the apartment building where he'd rented his secret place. I traced ownership through my investment portfolio until something jumped out. The building was scheduled for sale. I was planning to sell it in 3 months as part of a larger development deal that would net me $12 million in profit. My husband knew about the sale. I'd mentioned it once at dinner, talking about my work like I always did when he wasn't really listening. But he had been listening that time. And he'd figured out if he was divorced from me before the sale went through, he couldn't claim any portion of the profit as marital asset. He wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to leave me before I made $12 million he'd have to split in a divorce settlement. This wasn't about Brooke. This wasn't about love. This was about money. My money. I picked up my phone and made a call. "Felicity," I said when the attorney answered. "I'm restructuring my position. Draw up papers converting my loan to equity. 51% ownership of the company. I want it filed before they submit bankruptcy papers." "What? Why would you? That doesn't make sense. You wanted the business destroyed." "I changed my mind. Draw up the papers. You have 90 minutes. Cadence. This is 90 minutes. Send them to my office." I hung up and made another call. This one to a private investigator I'd used for client cases. "I need everything you can find on someone named Brooke. Works in marketing. Having an affair with my husband. I need her employment history, financial records, social media, everything. And I need it by end of business today. That's a tight timeline. Bill me triple. Just get it done." The third call went to my attorney. My personal attorney, not the business one. "I need to accelerate the property sale. The building downtown. The one scheduled for 3 months from now. Can we move it to this week? That'll cost you." Rushing a sale like that means accepting a lower offer. How much lower? Maybe 10 million instead of 12. Do it. And make sure the sale closes before any divorce proceedings begin. I want that money in my separate accounts, documented as pre-divorce assets. "You're filing?" He already did. Effectively. I'm just making sure I'm protected. By 10:15, the equity conversion papers arrived at my office. I read through them twice. 51% ownership of the company, controlling interest. The remaining 49% would be split between Gil and my husband. I'd be their boss now. Every decision would go through me. I signed the papers and sent them back. "File these immediately. Before the bankruptcy." At 10:30, Felicity called. "It's filed. You now own controlling interest in the company. They can't file for bankruptcy without your approval as majority owner." "What are you doing?" "Saving my investment. By taking over the company? You just spent the last 3 days trying to destroy it. Plans change. Set up a meeting for tomorrow morning. All employees. Conference room. I'll be addressing the staff. You're going to run the business? I'm going to restructure it. There's a difference." I spent the rest of Monday reviewing everything I could access about the company's operations. Client lists, contracts, employee records, financial statements. The business was profitable, well run, positioned for growth. Gil and my husband had built something solid. They just hadn't realized who actually owned the foundation. The investigator sent his report on Brooke at 6 that evening. I read it twice, then a third time, piecing together a picture that made my earlier realization look incomplete. Brooke wasn't just a marketing professional having an affair. She was a consultant who'd been hired 8 months ago specifically to evaluate the company for potential acquisition by a larger firm. She'd gotten close to my husband deliberately. The affair wasn't romance. It was strategy. She was feeding information to her actual employer, a national consulting group that wanted to buy my husband's business at a discount and absorb their client base. My husband thought he was having a love affair. He was actually being played by corporate espionage. And the timing of the divorce? That was Brooke's suggestion. According to text messages the investigator had pulled, she'd convinced my husband that divorcing before my property sale would protect his assets. What she'd really wanted was my husband destabilized and desperate, making it easier for her employer to swoop in with a lowball acquisition offer. I sat in my office until midnight, reading and rereading the report. Then I started making plans. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the company headquarters at 8. I'd been there before for parties and events, but never as someone who worked there, never as someone who owned it. The receptionist looked confused when I walked in. "Mrs. Cadence? Are you looking for your husband?" "No. I'm here for the staff meeting. I'm the new majority owner." Her face went through several expressions before settling on professional neutrality. Conference room. 3rd level. I took the stairs. The conference room was already filling with people who looked nervous and exhausted. They'd spent the last 72 hours thinking they were about to lose their jobs. They'd probably spent Monday night updating resumes and making phone calls. Gil and my husband stood at the front of the room. They both saw me enter. My husband's face went white. Gil just looked confused. "What are you doing here?" my husband asked. "I'm here to address my staff." I moved to the front of the room. 67 faces watched me. 67 people whose lives had been balanced on a knife edge because of decisions made by 3 people who should have known better. My name is Cadence. As of yesterday, I own 51% of this company. Some of you might be wondering how that happened. The short version is that 7 years ago, I invested $2 million that allowed this business to expand. That investment was structured as a loan. Yesterday, I converted it to equity. I'm now the majority shareholder and acting director. Silence. Complete and total. I know the last few days have been stressful. You were told the company might close, that your jobs were at risk. I want to be clear. That's not happening. The business is stable, profitable, and positioned for growth. Your jobs are secure. Nothing about your day-to-day work changes. Someone in the back raised a hand. A younger woman I didn't recognize. "What about Gil and—" She trailed off, not sure how to refer to my husband in front of me. "Gil remains as operations partner with reduced ownership. He's good at his job, and the business needs him." I turned to my husband. "As for you, I'm accepting your resignation effective immediately. You can't fire me. I built this company. I'm not firing you. I'm accepting the resignation you submitted yesterday when you told me you were leaving our marriage. You made it clear you want to start a new life. Consider this my gift. You're free to pursue whatever opportunities interest you." His face went from white to red. "This is my company. It was partially your company. Now it's partially Gil's company and majority mine. Security will help you collect your personal items within the hour." I'd arranged for security earlier that morning. 2 professional men in suits standing by the entrance. They stepped forward slightly, making their presence known. My husband looked around the room at people he'd worked with for years. Some wouldn't meet his eyes. Others looked sympathetic but said nothing. No one stood up for him. Maybe they knew about the affair. Maybe they'd just spent 3 days thinking they were unemployed because of his personal choices. Either way, the room stayed silent. "I'll fight this," he said quietly. "With what resources? You have no income as of now. Your ownership stake is worth roughly $2 million at current valuation, but that's tied up in company assets you can't liquidate without my approval. Your personal savings are minimal because you've been funding an affair in a secret apartment. Fight if you want. My attorneys are excellent." He left without another word. The room watched him go. I turned back to the staff. "I know this is strange. The owner's wife suddenly becoming the actual owner. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not here because of personal drama. I'm here because I made an investment 7 years ago, and I protect my investments. This company is good at what it does. You're all good at what you do. That continues." Gil spoke up. "What about the growth plans? The new locations we were developing? Those continue. I've reviewed the projections. They're sound. We'll meet next week to discuss timeline and funding." I spent the next 3 hours in meetings with department heads, reviewing operations, answering questions. Most people were cautiously relieved. A few were clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. I didn't blame them. It was uncomfortable. By noon, my husband's office was emptied. Security escorted him out with 2 boxes of personal items. I watched from a window as he loaded them into his vehicle. He sat there for a long time before driving away. The investigator's report on Brooke had included her employer's information. Tuesday afternoon, I called them. This is Cadence. I'm the new majority owner of the consulting firm you've been trying to acquire. I understand you had an employee gathering intelligence on our operations. I'd like to discuss that. The person on the other end stammered something about not knowing what I was talking about. Her name is Brooke. She was hired to get close to one of our partners and feed you information for a lowball acquisition offer. I have documentation, text messages, emails. Enough to make your corporate counsel very nervous. Silence. I'm willing to keep this quiet. In exchange, you'll terminate Brooke immediately and pay a settlement to my company for industrial espionage. $200,000. Non-negotiable. We'd have to review. You have until end of business today. After that, I file a lawsuit and send the documentation to every industry publication I can think of. Your reputation gets shredded. Your choice. They paid by 4 that afternoon. Brooke was terminated by 5. I forwarded all the documentation to my husband's phone with a simple message. Thought you should know what you're losing. He called immediately. I answered. Brooke was using me? She was using you to destabilize the company so her employer could acquire it cheaply. The affair was work. You were the mark. I don't believe you. Call her. Ask her yourself. She was just fired, so she'll have plenty of time to talk. He hung up. I never found out if he called her. I didn't particularly care. Wednesday, my attorney called about the property sale. It closed. $10 million deposited in your separate account. Documented as pre-divorce assets. He can't touch it. Good. File the divorce papers. Irreconcilable differences. I want everything separate. Clean split. What about the business? That's mine. Premarital investment that I can document. He gets his ownership percentage valued and bought out. Market rate. That's generous. That's fair. I'm not trying to destroy him. I'm just making sure he understands what he walked away from. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. During that time, I ran the company, learned the operations, met with clients, implemented new systems. Gil and I developed a functional working relationship based on mutual understanding that we'd both made mistakes and were both committed to not repeating them. The business grew. We opened 2 new locations, hired 30 more people. Revenue increased by 40%. My initial $2 million investment was now worth $13 million. My husband moved in with his mother at 43 years old. His ownership buyout gave him $2.1 million, which he used to start a small consulting practice. It's doing adequately. Not great, not terrible. He gets by. Gil rebuilt his retirement with his remaining ownership stake and salary. His kids finished college. He and Helena are still together. We're not friends, but we're professional. Brooke disappeared from the industry. Last I heard, she was working in a completely different field under her middle name. 6 months after the divorce finalized, I was having lunch with a potential client when I saw my ex-husband at a restaurant across the plaza. He was alone, eating a sandwich, looking at his phone. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Part of me wondered if I should feel guilty, if I'd gone too far, taken too much. Then I remembered 15 years of being interrupted, being dismissed, being introduced as just my wife, being treated like decoration instead of a partner, and I felt nothing except the satisfaction of knowing I'd protected myself when it mattered most. The client I was meeting asked about my background, how I'd gotten into business ownership. I made an investment, I said, and I made sure it paid off. That night, I got home to the house that was finally legally just mine. I poured a glass of wine and sat in the living area. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I heard what you did. Destroying the business and taking over? Ruining lives? I hope you're happy. I didn't recognize the number. Maybe someone from my ex-husband's family. Maybe Brooke from a burner phone. Maybe just someone who'd heard a version of the story that made me the villain. I deleted the message without responding. Other people's narratives weren't my concern. The truth was simple. I'd spent 15 years making myself small so someone else could feel big. When he tried to leave me at a moment that would have cost me $12 million, I stopped making myself small. I used every tool I had, legal contracts, investment leverage, strategic planning, to protect myself and reshape my life. Was it revenge? Partially. Was it justice? Maybe. Was it necessary? Absolutely. I finished my wine and went to bed in a house that was quiet and mine. The business was thriving. My bank accounts were secure. My ex-husband was learning what consequences feel like. And I was finally, after 15 years, exactly as big as I'd always been. Some people might think I went too far, that I should have just taken the divorce gracefully and moved on. But those people have never spent 15 years being made invisible by someone who promised to be their partner. They've never had to watch their career be dismissed as cute. They've never had to smile through dinner parties while their husband talks over them about his accomplishments built on their money. I didn't destroy him. I removed my support and let him stand on his own. The fact that he couldn't hold his balance wasn't my fault. It was his reality without the foundation he'd never acknowledged. And if that makes me the villain in someone's version of this story, I can live with that. Because in my version, I'm the woman who finally stopped accepting less than she deserved. And that's the only version that matters. So, if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, drop a comment telling me what you'd do differently. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about what happens when people finally stop playing small. Because the truth is, we're all capable of more than we think. Sometimes it just takes the right push to figure out exactly how much.